everyone, and welcome to Bookish Babbles, the podcast where we reread our favorite books and chat about them. I'm your host, Alyson, and without further ado, let's get started. Hello everyone, welcome to episode 19 of Bookish Babbles. Today we are talking about chapters 22 to 24 of The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. We're so close to the end and I'm not ready. It still feels like I'm only on episode 4 of Ballad. And speaking of Ballad, we have more casting news, and I know I keep saying it, but I'm so excited. And we're getting a lot lately. I worried I missed someone. But anyway, we got Hunter Scaffor as Tigress, the only Snow that we like in this book. And Hunter is most known for being on Euphoria, a show I have not watched, but do want to once I'm in the headspace for it. We got Laurel Martin as Mayfair Lip, the future Karen in the making that we don't like. She was on a TV series called Survive with Sophie Turner, and she plays Zoe Zimmer in Miss Marvel, which is a show I'm watching and is really good. We got Jason Schwartzman, I don't know names, as Lucky Flickerman. And someone on Instagram compared his picture to a young Stanley Tucci, and there is a resemblance, so really well done casting. I think I put the photo on Instagram, so link in the show notes. He's known for Rushmore and Moonrise Kingdom. We have Lily Maria Cooper as Arachne Crane. She's in The Witcher, another show I haven't watched. We got Nick Benson as Jessup Diggs. I think this is his first movie since there isn't anything else listed on his IMDb, but he did get his BFA in the acting program at the University of Southern California, so cool. We got Luna Steeples as Dill, who's the little girl from District 11. I think this is also her first movie, too. And we have Hiroki Berekloth as Treach, the boy from District 7. And this is also his first film. And according to his IMDb, he's set to graduate from the University of Manchester this year. So good for him. He got a job right after graduation. Must be nice. And not just for Ballad, but we've also been getting a lot of casting news for the Percy Jackson show, another series I plan to cover. So if you want to see the casting updates, I did also make a post on Instagram about that one. Anyway, so with all that being said, let's get into the episode. So last week, Katniss and Peeta get to know each other better, while Katniss is desperately trying to keep him alive. She goes to a feast to get the medicine to save his life and is almost killed, but Thresh saves her to honor Rue. This week, we get more cave bonding moments. Peeta unintentionally becomes responsible for someone's death, and the finale for the Hunger Games is about to begin. So with all that being said, let's dive into chapter 22. So where we last left off, Katniss makes it back to the cave with the medicine. She injects it into Peeta's arm while he's still unconscious from the sleep syrup, then passes out herself. This chapter opens with her waking up. She's pretty disoriented, even thinks for a moment that she's home, but then quickly remembers where she is once she realizes that it's Peeta and not her mother talking to her. He looks obviously a lot better than he did the last time we saw him. The swelling is almost completely gone. And now it's Peeta's turn to take care of Katniss, which again, I eat up moments like this because Katniss deserves to be taken care of every so often. And while all this is going on, there's a thunderstorm going on outside. Peeta wonders what brought on the storm, and Katniss is sure that it's because of whatever Cato and Thresh are getting up to. Because naturally, Cato will go after Thresh, since Thresh not only took his pack, he also killed Clove, whom Cato may or may not have had a thing with. That's up for speculation. And there's plenty of Cato and Clove fanfiction out there, which I may or may not have read a bit of back in the day, but that's up for you to decide for yourself. Anyway, I wish we could have gotten to see the fight between Thresh and Cato, because in the book we're obviously in Katniss's head, and she doesn't see the fight, but the movie pulls away from her POV occasionally, so we could have seen it. You know, big dramatic fight happening in the field, in the rain, to add to the drama. Would have been really cool to see. But while that's happening, though, Katniss and Peeta are having cute bonding moments. Must have been an exciting viewing experience for from like the Capitol audience perspective, because you got the two most powerful fighters trying to kill each other in the rain. Then you got Katniss and Peeta being all cute. Anyway, Katniss explains to Peeta about how Thresh killed Clove and then let her go, and naturally Peeta's a bit confused because, why would Thresh just let Katniss go like that? So Katniss has to explain everything that happened with Rue and how Thresh feel like he owed her a debt and this was his way of paying her back. And Katniss says, I wouldn't expect you to understand it since you're not from the Seam. Once again, showing, the different class backgrounds there are within District 12. And then they have the conversation about the whole thing with the bread. And this really shows a difference between book and movie Peeta. Because in the movie, Peeta brings up that almost as soon as they enter the cave, and he goes on about how he thinks about it all the time and regrets not going to Katniss and talking to her. And it makes him seem a little bit obsessive, especially when he says that line about how he watched her walk home every day. I mean, this was 2012. Twilight was still in its heyday, and every studio wanted to launch its own Twilight franchise with less than ideal love interest, so it could have been a lot worse. But in the book, Peeta is shocked that Katniss is still fixated on that, because to him it wasn't as big of a deal. He doesn't understand how literally life-saving that was for Katniss. And it's such a small moment, I guess, but it tells you so much. It gives you a glimpse into who Peeta is as a person, and I do believe he's being 100% genuine in this moment. And Peeta's more trusting than Katniss and more willing and ready to give something like bread away with no strings attached and not expecting anything in return. And again, it just shows the different mentality between the classes in District 12. And another moment that's a little later in the scene, or maybe it's the next chapter, I can't remember, whatever, but when they're talking about the field that Thresh is hiding in, Peeta sees it as the scary, sinister feeling place, and he sees danger because all he can think about are the dangers hidden in the fields, like snake and quicksand, and I would too personally, whereas Katniss sees it as a potential food source. And again, difference of mentality of their class background. And because Peeta's someone who's never had to worry too much about where he's going to get his next meal, meanwhile it's all Katniss can think about, and she often has to get creative about how to provide for her family. And I love how Suzanne talks about this stuff, because it doesn't feel like the book is talking down to us. And it's not being like, you see, kids, this is why Katniss feels this way. Oh my god. I really appreciate that. And it's part of the reason why The Hunger Games is one of the best books of all time. Anyway, time for another reading. I'm going to read the conversation that they have on page 293 when Katniss talks about the bread and the conversation they have about Haymitch, Cato, and Thresh afterward, because it's really hard for me not to read the conversations that they have. So it starts on the top of page 293, where Katniss says, "It's like the bread, I say. How I never seem to get over owing you for that, I say." "The bread? What, from when we were kids?" he says. "I think we can let that go. I mean, you just brought me back from the dead. But you didn't know me. We had never even spoken. Besides, it's the first gift that's always the hardest to pay back. I wouldn't even have been here to do it if you hadn't helped me, I say. Why did you, anyway?" "Why? You know why," says Peeta. I give my head a slight, painful shake. "Haymitch said you would take a lot of convincing." "Haymitch," I say. "What's he got to do with it?" "Nothing," Peeta says. "So, Cato and Thresh, huh? I guess it's too much to hope that they'll simultaneously destroy each other? But the thought only upsets me. I think we would like Thresh. I think he'd be our friend back in District 12, I say. Then let's hope Cato kills him so we don't have to," says Peeta grimly. "I don't want Cato to kill Thresh at all. I don't want anyone else to die. But this is absolutely not the kind of thing that victors go around saying in the arena. Despite my best efforts, I can feel tears starting to pool in my eyes. Peeta looks at me concerned. "What is it? Are you in a lot of pain?" I give him another answer, because it is equally true, but can be taken as a brief moment of weakness instead of a terminal one. "I want to go home, Peeta," I said plaintively, like a small child. "You will, I promise," and he bends over to give me a kiss. "I want to go home now," I say. "Tell you what, You go back to sleep and dream of home, and you'll be there before you know it, he says. Okay? Okay, I whisper. Wake me if you need me to keep watch. I'm good and rested thanks to you and Hamish. Besides, who knows how long this will last, he says. What does he mean? The storm? The brief respite and it brings us? The games themselves? I don't know, but I'm too sad and tired to ask. So, when Peeta wakes Katniss up, it's evening and it's downpouring to the point where water is leaking through the cave roof. So the plastic sheet that Katniss got during the bloodbath is coming in real handy right now. They decide to eat the rest of their food so that it doesn't go bad and that tomorrow will be a hunting day. And Peeta makes a comment about wishing there was a bread bush out there so he could be of more help hunting. Then Peeta makes some comment about how he wonders what it would take to get Hamish to send them some food. And then they have some more banter, as they do. When Katniss says that Hamish probably used up a lot of his resources helping him knock Peeta out. And this is another important conversation moment, so already we're on another reading, so I'm going to read it for you guys. It's on page 297. So it starts with Peeta saying, "Don't try something like that again." "Or what?" I ask. Or, he can't think of anything good. Just give me a minute. "What's the problem?" I say with a grin. "The problem is we're both still alive, which only reinforces the idea in your mind that you did the right thing," says Peeta. "I did do the right thing," I say. "No, just don't, Katniss." His grip tightens, hurting my hand, and there's real anger in his voice. "Don't die for me. You won't be doing me any favors, all right?" I'm startled by his intensity, but recognize an excellent opportunity for getting food, so I try to keep up. "Maybe I did it for myself, Peeta. Did you ever think of that? Maybe you aren't the only one who worries about what it would be like if..." I fumble. I'm not as smooth with words as Peeta, and while I was talking, the idea of actually losing Peeta hit me again, and I realize how much I don't want him to die. And it's not about the sponsors, and it's not about what will happen back home, and it's not just that I don't want to be alone. It's him. I do not want to lose the boy with the bread. "If what, Katniss?" he asked softly. I wish I could pull the shutters close, blocking out this moment from the prying eyes of Panem. Even if it means losing food. Whatever I'm feeling, it's no one's business but mine. "That's exactly the kind of topic Hamish told me to steer clear of," I say evasively, although Hamish never said anything of the kind. In fact, he's probably cursing me out right now for dropping the ball during such an emotionally charged moment, but Peeta somehow catches it. "Then I'll just have to fill in the blanks myself," he says, and moves into me. This is the first kiss that we're both fully aware of. Neither of us hobbled by sickness or pain or simply unconscious. Our lips neither burning with fever or icy cold. This is the first kiss where I actually feel stirring inside my chest, warm and curious. This is the first kiss that makes me want another. I just wrote in my notes, "Insert screaming here," because that's exactly what I did the first time I read this scene. So, like Katniss says, this is her first kiss. This is where she actually starts to feel something. And this is when Katniss truly starts to, care for Peeta, I think. As a person, as a friend. Maybe in a romantic way, too, though she doesn't realize it yet, obviously. But, that's up to interpretation. Not sure if I think she feels anything romantic yet. I lean a little more toward no, but I don't know, a little hard to say. But anyway, then they huddle up in the sleeping bag together to keep warm, and thankfully the weather is so bad that it's unlikely anyone will come after them, so even though Katniss tries to keep watch, they can mostly rest. Katniss also makes a comment about how this is the first time since her father died that anyone has held her in a way that made her feel safe, but no big deal, I'm fine. Anyway, the next day the weather is still bad, so they can't go hunting, which is not good since they ate all their food the day before. So it's obvious that Katniss realizes that the only way they can get food is through Hamish, but to do that, they'll really need to start playing up the romance, especially since the most exciting thing either of them have done that day was nap. So Katniss asks Peeta to tell her, about the first time he realized he had a crush on her, and he tells her that it was the first day of school. So basically on their first day of school when they were 5 years old, and Peeta's father's taking him to school, he points to Katniss in the crowd and says, like, hey, see that little girl? I wanted to marry her mother when we were children, but she ran off with the coal miner. And little Peeta's like, well, why would she do that? And he said, because when he sang, all the birds would be silent or fall quiet around him. So I didn't stand a chance. During that first day at music assembly, the teacher asked, like, who knows the Valley song? And Katniss knew, so she stood up and sang for everyone, and little Peeta swears that all the birds outside fell silent, and that's when Peeta knew that he was a goner. And that's really a really sweet moment. And then Peeta makes a comment, and then Peeta said, for years worked up the courage to try to talk to you, but it never worked. And so he then comments about how in a strange way getting reaped was lucky, since he finally got to talk to her. And for just a moment, Katniss is happy, but then she's quickly confused because, as far as she knows, they're only supposed to, pretend that at being in love. But Peeta's story does have truth to it, and she did sing on the first day of school, and the birds did stop to listen to her father sing. And if that story is true, it could explain why Peeta would choose to take a beating just to give Katniss some bread. So that leaves her to wonder, could everything be true? Oh no. So nothing to do now except read the last page of the chapter. So it starts with Katniss saying, you have a remarkable memory, I say haltingly. I remember everything about you, says Peeta, tucking a loose strand of hair behind my ear. You're the one who wasn't paying attention. I am now, I say. Well, I don't have much competition here, he says. I want to draw away, to close those shutters again, but I know I can't. It's as if I can hear Haymitch whispering in my ear, say it, say it. I swallow hard and get the words out. You don't have much competition anywhere, and this time it's me who leans in. Our lips have just barely touched when the clunk outside makes us jump. My bow comes up, the arrow ready to fly, but there's no other sound. Peeta peers through the rocks and then gives a whoop. Before I can stop him, he's out in the rain, then handing something in to me. A silver parachute attached to a basket. I rip it open at once, and inside there's a feast. Fresh rolls, goat cheese, apples, and best of all, a turn of that incredible lamb stew on wild rice, the very dish I told Caesar Flickerman was the most impressive thing the capital had to offer. Peeta wrinkles back inside, his face lit up like the sun. I guess Haymitch finally got tired of watching us starve. I guess so, I answer. But in my head, I can hear Haymitch's smug, if slightly exasperated words. Yes, that's what I'm looking for, sweetheart. Poor Peeta, because he doesn't see the strings that are attached to the food the way Katniss does. Oh boy. So, all that being said, time for a break. When we come back, we'll talk about chapter 23. Hello everyone, this is Alyson from a different point in time, and I'm here to bring you another random recommendation. So this week I'm recommending a book that I may or may not have peer pressured my cousin into buying when I brought her to the bookstore. It's one of my favorite YA contemporaries, and also has one of the most beautiful covers I've ever seen. We Are Okay by Nina LaCour, so I'll read you guys the description. You go through life thinking there's so much you need, until you leave with only your phone, your wallet, and a picture of your mother. Marin hasn't spoken to anyone from her old life since the day she left everything behind. No one knows the truth about those final weeks and the tragedy Marin has tried to outrun, not even her best friend Mabel. Now, months later, alone in an empty dorm for winter break, Marin waits. Mabel is coming to visit, and Marin will finally be forced to face everything that's been left unsaid and confront the loneliness that has made a home in her heart. An intimate whisper that packs an undeniable punch, this gorgeously crafted and achingly honest portrayal of grief will leave you urgent to reach across any distance to reconnect with the people you love. So yeah, We Are Okay by Nina LaCour. If you want to feel things, I recommend reading it, and it's probably my favorite Nina LaCour book I've read so far. I haven't read all of them, but this one's definitely my favorite, and I'm lucky I got a signed copy. Yay. So, yep, with that being said, back to the episode. And we're back. So, Katniss is probably feeling really guilty right now because she may or may not be unintentionally playing with Peeta's emotions because he may or may not have real feelings for her. Spoiler alert, he does. But no time to dwell on that right now. There's food to eat. They have enough willpower to not eat everything right away since they don't want to get sick like they almost did that first night on the train. Then when they take an hour break from eating, they get in the sleeping bag and once again play into the romance. Peeta talks about words, Alyson. Peeta talks about how no other girl really made an impression on him the way Katniss did, which sounds so cheesy and cliche, but feels genuinely sweet coming from Peeta. And once again, I'm going to read you guys the conversation they had because it's great. It's on page 304. So it starts with Katniss saying, I'm sure that would thrill your parents, you liking a girl from the seam, I say. Hardly, but I couldn't care less. Anyway, if we make it back, you won't be a girl from the seam. You'll be a girl from the victor's village, he says. That's right. If we win, we'll each get a house in the part of town reserved for Hunger Games victors. Long ago, when the games began, the capital had built 12 fine houses in each district. Of course, in ours, only one is occupied. Most of the others have never been lived in at all. A disturbing thought hits me. But then our only neighbor will be Haymitch. Ah, that'll be nice, says Peeta, tightening his arm around me. You and me and Haymitch. Very cozy. Picnics, birthdays, long winter nights around the fire, retelling old Hunger Games tales. I told you, he hates me, I say, but I can't help laughing at the image of Haymitch becoming my new pal. Only sometimes, when he's sober. I've never heard him say one negative thing about you, says Peeta. He's never sober, I protest. That's right. Who am I thinking of? Oh, I know, it's Cinna who likes you. But that's mainly because you didn't try to run when he set you on fire, says Peeta. On the other hand, Haymitch... Well, if I were you, I'd avoid Haymitch completely. He hates you. I thought you said I was his favorite, I say. He hates me more, says Peeta. I don't think people in general are his sort of thing. Again, this is everyone's friendly reminder that Peeta is funny. I wish the movies would have had more moments like this. Also, tiny nitpicky thing, Katniss, but no, not when the games first were invented did you have Victor's Village. It wasn't until after the 10th Hunger Games, but that's okay. I doubt you learn real history anyway in Panem. Where was I? Right. Then Katniss starts to sympathize more with Haymitch because, again, poor Haymitch has been having to be a mentor all alone, all this time, year after year, feeling responsible for 2 kids and watching them die. Katniss also starts to realize that Peeta's right. She and Haymitch are very alike. As much as they may dislike each other at times, they do have a way of communicating with each other, like how Katniss was able to figure out the reason Haymitch was withholding water from her during the first couple of days was because a water source was close. Katniss also wonders how Haymitch won his game since he doesn't have any obvious traits most winners would have, like, good looks, really well-trained fighter, stuff like that. And she and Peeta both agree he probably won because he outsmarted everyone. But don't worry, kids, we'll get to the answer in book 2. And spoiler alert, it's really, really sad. Then time passes, and as they're about to dive into their second course of lamb stew and rice, the anthem starts playing. Katniss thinks that no deaths will be reported since they didn't hear a cannon go off that day. But when Peeta looks out, it's revealed that Thresh is dead, so they couldn't hear a cannon over all the thunder. Katniss then looks outside and does see Thresh's picture for herself, and she's understandably upset, because she feels a connection to Thresh after all since he spared her life. And then again, she's reminded of Rue since she's the reason Thresh let Katniss go in the first place. But unfortunately, Katniss can't let these emotions show, and she explains why on page 307. I slumped down against the rocks, momentarily forgetting about the task at hand. Thresh is dead. I should be happy, right? One less tribute to face, and a powerful one, too. But I'm not happy. All I can think about is Thresh letting me go, letting me run because of Rue, who died with that spear in her stomach. You all right? Asked Peeta. I give a non-committal shrug and cup my elbows in my hand, hugging them close to my body. I have to bury the real pain because who's going to bet on a tribute who keeps sniveling over the deaths of her opponents? Rue was one thing. We were allies. She was so young. But no one will understand my sorrow at Thresh's murder. The word pulls me up short. Murder. Thankfully, I didn't say it out loud. That's not going to win me any points in the arena. What I do say is, it's just, if we didn't win, I wanted Thresh to, because he let me go, and because of Rue. Yeah, I know, says Peeta, but this means we're one step closer to District 12. And again, just like with Rue's death, Katniss is starting to really mentally work against what the Capitol teaches about the tribute's death, how they're so honorable and necessary, or whatever bullshit they teach in Capitol-run schools. And anyway, so while Katniss and Peeta are eating, they talk about the remaining competition. Cato will be back to hunting them again, and he's got more supplies. But the good news is that Katniss is sure he'll at least be injured because Thresh would not have gone down without a fight. And Katniss is also sure that it'll be easier to find Cato than Foxface, since they never seem to know where she is. Either way, they have to be careful and to not fall asleep during watches. So that night, Peeta takes first watch, and Katniss buries herself in the sleeping bag so she can get a moment of privacy and mourn Thresh's death. When Peeta wakes Katniss for her shift, he gives her some cheese to eat since he ate some. And here we learn that back home, Peeta mostly eats stale food, and that they can no longer sell in the bakery, which is really sad. Like, Katniss always stresses about how she'll get her next meal, but at least she always gets to eat fresh food. Then during her shift, Katniss naturally starts thinking about stuff, as you do. She wonders how long she's been gone from home, and she guesses probably a month, which is crazy because so much has obviously happened, but like Katniss, I feel like we've been in the arena forever, even though we didn't get into the arena until almost like halfway through the book. She also starts to really think about home and even dares to hope that she'll also win and make it home. She and her family will move into the Victor's village, no more fear of starvation. She also has a bit of a crisis because what would she do then? Most of her time is spent getting food, so what would she do with all her free time once she's a rich victor? And she's still determined never to have kids because being a victor doesn't mean that your kid is safe from the reaping. And you know what? It's really nice that among all the oppression that's going on around her, at least in District 11, Katniss is still free to choose whether or not she wants to get married and have kids. And on a completely unrelated note, if anyone in the United States is looking to go on a camping trip outside their state, check out the link in the show notes. Anyway. Katniss also feels unsure about what her relationship with Peeta will be like. She's sure they'll still be good friends, but she suddenly starts to feel very uncomfortable thinking about Gale. But no time to dwell on that. We don't care about Gale here. Gotta wake up Peeta and start hunting. My cousin is sitting next to me as I'm recording, and she just celebrated silently when I said we don't care about Gale. Anyway, this isn't awkward or anything. What was I saying? Right, no time to dwell on that. Peeta's hunting. And completed with a good morning kiss as well. Aww. They also eat breakfast, and they lick their fingers just to drive Effie crazy, because they know she's watching. And just like that, we've come to the end of all the big cave scenes. I love these scenes so much, not only because, Katniss and Peeta are bonding, but because it almost feels like the games took a pause, like, the closest you can get to a vacation in the arena. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm someone who gets really nervous when intense things are happening in books. It's the reason why I don't often read thrillers, because I get too stressed out reading and I have to put the book down for a while. So it always takes me longer than I think to finish it. Though it's good that we have that while we're in the cave with Peeta, we get a chance to breathe. Katniss decides to head back to her old hunting grounds. And it's clear that it's going to be really hard to hunt with Peeta, since it's bad enough that he has a bad leg, but he just doesn't know how to walk in the woods quietly because he's not a hunter. It's not what he does. Katniss is getting a bit irritated since she doesn't want to waste time, and Peeta, while doing his best, is scaring off all the prey. So Peeta suggests Katniss show him what kind of plants he can gather for food, and then she can hunt better on her own. She's scared to do so since, they could be attacked while separated, but Peeta convinces her to let him. And she teaches him a bird whistle so they can signal to each other that they're all right. Katniss feels more and more anxious the further she moves away from Peeta, so she keeps checking in with the bird whistle, and so far so good. Katniss catches 2 rabbits and a squirrel, then heads back to find the pack with a neat pile of roots beside it and some berries laid out as well. Katniss calls out for Peeta, but no response. She panics, runs down to the stream, and finds him perfectly fine. Just gathering some berries. He's good. Katniss yells at him for not answering when she called, though he couldn't hear her over the stream. And Katniss's reaction is understandable since the last time an ally didn't respond to her, they died. And that's when Katniss noticed that some of the cheese from their pile of food is missing. At first she thinks that Peeta has started to eat without her, but he denies it and offers her some of the berries he picked. Katniss almost takes them, but then recognizes what they are. Her father showed them to her once. They're nightlock berries. 1 bite and you'll be dead before they reach your stomach. And just then, a cannon fires, but Peeta is okay. He did not eat the berries. Then they see a hovercraft about 100 yards away, lifting Foxface's body out of the arena. Peeta immediately thinks Cato is responsible and thus will attack them in any moment, so he tells Katniss to climb up a tree so they'll have a better chance of fighting him. But then the chapter ends with Katniss telling Peeta that Cato didn't kill Foxface, he did. So with that being said, we'll take another break and we'll come back and unpack all that. Alright, back with another random recommendation, and I'm going to mix it up because I like other things other than books, so I can randomly recommend anything I want because it's my show. So, for those of you who don't know, I also love musicals. I mean, I did do the musical theater book tag earlier last month? This month? I don't know. But I did with my friend Gabby. So the point is I love books and I love musicals. So I'm going to recommend one of my favorites. And it is a weird one, but I promise it's really good. And that's Carrie the Musical. As in, the book that Stephen King wrote. It was originally, on Broadway as a musical in the 80s. But then, flopped. It's one of, the biggest Broadway flops of all time. But then back in 2012, they did an off-Broadway revival. And I really love it. And I listened to the soundtrack on repeat. So if you like Heathers the Musical, I think you'll like Carrie. And it's one of my bucket list shows that I really want to do. So, yep, Carrie the Musical. Go listen to it. And back to the episode. I can feel them pause curiously at the sound of my voice, listening for more. I repeat the notes in the silence. First one mockingjay trills the tune back, then another, then the whole world comes alive with the sound. Just like your father, says Peeta. My fingers find the pin of my shirt. That's Rue's song, I say. I think they remember it. The music swells, and I recognize the brilliance of it. As the notes overlap, they complement one another, forming a lovely, unearthly harmony. It was this sound, then, thanks to Rue, that sent the orchard workers of District 11 home with each night. Does someone start it at quitting time, I wonder, now that she is dead? For a while I just close my eyes and listen, mesmerized by the beauty of the song. Then something begins to disrupt the music. Runs cut off in jagged, imperfect lines. Dissonant notes interspersed with the melody. The Mockingjay's voices rise up in a shrieking cry of alarm. We're on our feet, Peeta wielding his knife, me poised to shoot, when Cato smashes through the trees and bears down on us. He has no spear. In fact, his hands are empty, yet he runs straight for us. My first arrow hits his chest and inexplicably falls aside. He's got some kind of body armor, I shout to Peeta. Just in time, too, because Cato is upon us. I brace myself, but he rockets right between us, so with no attempt to check his speed. I can tell from his panting, the sweat pouring off his purplish face, that he's been running hard for a long time. Not toward us, from something. But what? My eyes scan the woods just in time to see the first creature leap into the plain. As I'm turning away, I see another 6 join it. Then I am stumbling blindly after Cato, with no thought of anything but to save myself. And we're back. So this chapter opens with Katniss explaining to Peeta what happened. Basically, we know Foxface has a habit of stealing food from other tributes, and she's careful only to take a little at a time so she doesn't raise any suspicion. This time was no different. She took the cheese, some of the berries. Foxface assumed that the berries would be safe since PETA had clearly planned on eating them, so she outfoxed herself. Ha ha ha. Dumb pun. PETA feels a little bad since it seems like an unfair way to go, but Katniss assures him that they're one step closer to home. Also, there's a fairly popular theory going around the fandom about Foxface, basically that she ate the berries on purpose. Like, I don't think it's ever mentioned in the book what she does during training, but in the movie we see her at a station where she has to name plants really fast. At least I think that's what she's doing with all, like, the button pressy thing. So theoretically she would know what nightlock berries are, but at this point in the games, like, she's decided that she's very likely not going to win, so to save herself from meeting a gruesome end in the finale, she gives herself a quick, painless death, and she took the berries from PETA to make it look unintentional so that her family back home doesn't get punished or anything. Because we all know the Capitol hates it when you don't play the game the way they want you to. Just ask Haymitch, but we're not going to talk about that yet. That's book 2. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about that theory, because I can believe it, and it gives more depth to Foxface's character. And we never actually learn her name. Whoops. So, PETA's about to get rid of the rest of the berries, but Katniss decides to keep some in case they get a chance to trick Cato into eating them. Because if they can accidentally trick Foxface into eating them, then Cato definitely would. Actually, it's a small miracle that Cato hasn't already accidentally eaten something that could kill him. Because I doubt he has very, very many survival skills other than fight, stabby stab with a sword. Anyway. Katniss decides to make a fire since Cato's likely to know where they are anyway, though he never shows up. Then again, I wouldn't either if I knew my opponent was inviting me somewhere. After they're done eating, Katniss wants to set up camp in a tree, but PETA asks if they can go back to the cave since he can't climb very well with his bad leg, and knows that they can't stay out in the open. Katniss is initially annoyed, but decides that it's only fair since PETA's followed her instructions all day and doesn't ask for much. Plus, she realizes she also hasn't been the nicest person to him today. They make it back to the cave and settle in for the night, and Katniss gives PETA a kiss on the forehead. Aw, because she's happy. He's here, and she's glad that she won't have to face Cato alone. She also wonders if Cato's a little bit insane because, you know, of the tantrums he threw earlier, and he seems like the type. I mean, I feel like in real life, Cato would be a menace to society, and unfortunately, the kind that would never face consequences for his actions. But anyway, Katniss ends up staying up all night because she's so anxious. So when PETA gets up, he makes her sleep, and when she wakes up, it's the afternoon. Katniss wonders when the game makers will drive them together for the finale. PETA guesses that it could happen at any moment, since Foxface died almost a day ago, and enough time has passed for people to place their final bets and get bored. So today's the day. Yay. So Katniss decides that they should eat up and head out. As they're leaving the cave, there's a good line on page 326 that I just want to read aloud to you guys. Leaving the cave has a sense of finality about it. I don't think there will be another night in the arena somehow. One way or the other, dead or alive, I have a feeling I'll escape it today. Also, they discover that the stream is bone dry. They check a couple of the other water sources that they know about, but it soon becomes really clear that there's no water. They realize that the game makers are forcing them to go to the lake, and this is where they want the finale to be. So with nothing left to do, they head for the lake. On their way, they pass the tree where the careers had trapped Katniss, even see the beaten remains of the Tracker Jacker nest. They reach the lake early evening, but no sign of Cato. He's not even hiding in the cornucopia. And since Katniss doesn't want to fight after dark, she decides to give Cato another hour, then they'll find cover. Then she sees a mockingjay and sings Rue's 4-note melody, so I'm just gonna, since there's like a page and a half left, I'm just gonna read it to you guys. And that's where it ends, because Suzanne loves her end of chapter cliffhangers, and it's why we all kept reading when we first read the book. So yeah, that's the end of the chapter, and that's all I got for today. Thank you so much for listening. You guys know the drill. Instagram, email, all that stuff in the show notes. Next week we will be covering the end of the book, and then after that we'll have a wrap-up episode, and then we will have an episode talking about the movie where I may or may not have a few guests. You'll have to stick around. But yeah, like I said, thank you again for listening, and with all that being said, hope you guys have a great day/night whenever you're listening, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye!